a biology concern of it is, right? So we'll go ahead with a particularly question here, and with respect to the question, if you consider mainly RQ is the ratio of, they are asking regarding what respiratory quotient here and what exactly it is. CO2 produced to substrate consumed, then CO2 produced to O2 consumed, oxygen consumed to water produced, and oxygen consumed to CO2 produced. So according to that, if you consider here, majorly we are going to find out it is a CO2 produced to O2 consumed, right? That is nothing but what? The amount of mainly the CO2 produced to the volume of what oxygen consumed, right? That itself what we are going to call it as what? The particularly the RQ, right? So according to this, if you consider CO2 produced to O2 consumed itself is a what right answer with respect to the word RQ, right? That is what respiratory quotient. And even you know that respiratory quotient with respect to the carbohydrate is what? 1, right? Because the amount of carbon is what? 6, and amount of oxygen consumed is what? Even 6, right? So then you consider what? With respect to the protein it is 0.9, and with respect to the fat it is what? 0.7, right? So that is what the respiratory quotient of what? The carbohydrate, protein, and even fats, right? So next question, that is mainly related with what? Multiple choice here, right? So what they are saying here, the over exploitation by humans, right? Over exploitation, or mainly like introduction of what? Neel, indigenous catfish you consider, then clarius, the particularly grape-iness, and introduction of what? Water, right? So based on that we have to actually match this particularly. So according to that, if you consider over exploitation of human is nothing but what? It's an extinction of the particularly passenger pigeon, right? So by means of what? Over exploitation of what? This particularly forest you consider, right? So majorly there what started taking place? The extinction of what? The passenger pigeon, right? Then introduction of what? Nail indigenous catfish, right? So nail indigenous catfish, it is nothing but what? Related with the extension of what? Killed hyacinth in the particularly India fish, right? So there you can find out, right? So which is related with what? Nail perch, right? Then the clarius garipans, right? So clarius garipans is related with what? Posing threat to the what? The perch in the particularly lake of what? Victoria, right? Then majorly with respect to that only, if you consider the introduction of what? Water, mainly that is what? The environmental damage and a threat to the what? Native species. So here the particularly according to this, if you consider, that is what? Option 2 is correct, right? Then we'll go ahead further with respect to the next question, that is what? Statement 1, that is what they are saying, bryophytes are the amphibians of what? Plant kingdom. Then statement 2 says they live in soil but depend on to the what? Water for a sexual reproduction, right? So overall if you consider, mainly bryophytes can be considered as amphibians of a plant kingdom. The reason for it is being nearer to the what? The water, mainly the moist condition, or what we call it as the particular terrestrial form, where actually the moist condition is required, moist condition is must, right? So definitely it survives with respect to the what? Soil. To carry out its sexual mode of what? Reproduction, it depends on to the what? Water. So because of that only we call the bryophyte as the amphibians of what? Plant kingdom. So based on this, if you consider here, both the statement 1 and statement 2 are what? Correct, right? Then next question, the process involving the transfer of what? Electrons in the light reaction of photosynthesis in a plant is, right? The process involving transfer of electrons in the light reaction of photosynthesis in plant is, right? Cyclic photophosphorylation, ATP synthesis in the particularly mitochondria, Z scheme, non-cyclic chemophosphorylation. So according to respect to the what is Z scheme, because whatever the process involving the transfer of electrons in a light reaction, how it can take place with respect to the photosynthesis, with respect to the sunlight, it will fall onto the what? The PS2 system, that is of what? 680 nanometer, which will actually absorb, which will have what? Light harvesting complex. Then it releases what? Electron, and that electron will go with respect to the electron acceptor. Then electron acceptor will get reduced and releases the electrons into the what electron transport system, right? So there mainly the formation of what the particularly ADP to ADP plus pi or inorganic phosphate to what ATP can take place. Then from the electron transport system, the electrons are transferred to the PS1, right? That is what PS1 is of what 700 nanometer, right? So with respect to the PS2, again sunlight of what 700 nanometer is going to fall on, right? Then it will lead into the what release of what electrons, right? And electron acceptor will take, and that will again downhill will pass on to the what electron transport system. But during this period, the NADP will get converted into what NADPH2, right? So like that, the particularly a Z scheme type of what reaction is going to take place related with respect to the what here the electrons in the light reactions of photosynthesis in plant is, that is nothing but what Z scheme, right? Then you consider overallly with respect to that the next question, that is assertion, right? Assertion, what it says, two kingdom classification was insufficient. Reason, majority of organisms did not fall into either of what categories in a two kingdom classification. So according to that, if you consider here the both, that is what both assertion and reasons are correct, and the reason is the actually correct explanation of assertion. The reason, like why it is the two kingdom classification or two domain classification, which was related with respect to the only plant and animal, right? But majority of the organisms, they have not categorized into this particularly characters what they have framed regarding what a plant and animal. So based on that only here both assertion and reasons are the particularly correct. Reason is actually the correct explanation of what this particularly assertion, that is what two kingdom classification was insufficient, right? Because there were again so many organisms left out to classify and add it into the particularly type of what groups, right? Then statement 1, what it says, the genetic diversity comparisons, right? So genetic diversity comparisons of what different type of what gene in different type species as well as what same what same species. Then second statement 2 is what the amphibian species diversity is more in Eastern Ghats than the particularly what Western Ghats. So here actually if you consider the both the statements are what wrong here, right? Both the statement 1 and statement 2 are incorrect, because amphibian species diversity is more in particularly Western Ghats than the particularly what the Eastern Ghats, right? With respect to the what Eastern Ghats, and mainly like what genetic diversity comparisons of different types of genes in the particularly different type of species as well as what same species they are saying. So according to that, if you consider here both the statement 1 and 2 are what incorrect, right? Then next question, that is what read the following statement and choose the what incorrect statements. We have to choose what here actually the incorrect form of what statement. There what they are saying, nitrogenous bases is linked to pentose sugar. Nitrogenous bases is linked to pentose sugar through N-glycosidic linkage, right? Nitrogenous bases is linked to the pentose sugar through the particularly N-glycosidic linkage. Yes, with respect to the pentose sugar, if I find out, right? So with respect to the what the first carbon position only, there will be an attachment of what nitrogen, and that is by means of what N-glycosidic bond, right? By means of what N-glycosidic bond only the attachment can be seen. Then phosphate group is linked to the 5' of what OH of the particularly nucleoside through the what phosphoester bond linkage, right? So that what consider what nitrogen base and pentose sugar is what actually the nucleoside, right? So it is a nucleoside. Then definitely at the what fifth carbon position with respect to the what OH, I am going to find out the attachment of a what phosphate group, that is what H3PO4 by means of what the phosphoester bond, right? By means of what phosphoester bond, right? Majorly we call it as a phosphodiester bond. That can be seen when the particularly we compare with what the two strands of what this particularly DNA. Then I can say it as what phosphodiester bond, right? Then two nucleosides are linked through the two nucleotides are linked through what 3 dash to 5 dash N glycosidic linkage, right? So nucleosides are what linked to 3 dash to 5 dash of what this particularly glycosidic linkage what they are asking. But here if you consider at the third position only there will be an attachment, right? So when there is an attachment, it is not by means of what glycosidic bond, but it is with respect to the sugar and phosphate backbone what we are going to find out. Then negatively, so this statement is wrong, so remaining these two are what correct. Then again negatively charged DNA is wrapped up around positively charged histone octamer to form a nucleosome. Yes, this is also what correct. So according to this they asked what incorrect statement, and here the option 3 is correct, because 3 itself is what incorrect related with respect to the two nucleosides are what linked with respect to the what 3 dash 5 dash N of what glycosidic linkage, because nucleoside won't get linked with each other, but actually the nucleotide is going to get linked together, right? Then next question, the particularly microtubule of mitotic spindle attaches to a specialized structure in the particularly centromere region of what each chromosome called. Then what it is called? It is actually called as what? The particularly kinetochore. The microtubule of the mitotic spindle attaches to a specialized structure in the what centromere region of what each chromosome. Now with respect to the chromosome, if you consider, these are what the particularly sister chromatids, right? Two sister chromatids what we are going to find out, and at the center I am finding out the presence of what the particularly centromere, right? Onto the back of the centromere I am finding out something called as the presence of what kinetochore, right? And that can be seen with respect to this particularly question, that is what option 4 is correct, right? Then next question, that is what match the column 1 containing a type of what the particularly estivation here, right? So match the column 1 with respect to the particularly estivation with their examples given in column 2 and choose the what correct options. So here they have told what velvet type of estivation. So velvet type estivation is nothing but what? It's an arrangement of what sepals and petals, right? Sepals and petals with respect to the floral whorl itself is called as what? The particularly estivation. So first one they are saying it as what? Velvet, and velvet can be seen with respect to the calotropous, right? Then twisted, here you can find out, right? One edge of it is will be the outside and one will be the what inside, like that it is going to form what? The twisted one, right? So that twisted you are going to find out with respect to the here coconut, right? Then embrycate you can consider one of the petal is actually covered up by means of one more, like that only the arrangement what we are going to find out. So that is what embrycate type, right? So that can be seen with respect to the what here, the particularly in embrycate one will be the inside petal and one will be the out, so two will be the what totally out, right? Like that of what arrangement you can find out. So this type of arrangement we find out with respect to the vexillary type, right? So embrycate here, which one is the embrycate here? That is nothing but what gulmohar, and vexillary is nothing but what here the bean. So based on this particularly I am finding out the particularly option 2 is being what correct here, right? Then next question, that is what primary treatment of sewage is, right? Primary treatment of sewage is a physical process, biological process, chemical process, biochemical process. So primary treatment is mainly the physical process. Why it is physical process? Because with respect to the what sieve elements only the filtration can be carried out, solid particles can be what removed with respect to the what primary treatment. Then whatever that particularly sewage or whatever left out, that will move on with respect to the what the particularly secondary type of treatment, where the actually flokes even can be what seen, right? So according to that the option 1 is correct. The primary treatment of what sewage is the physical process, right? Then the next question is double fertilization is a characteristic features of what angiosperm, right? That is what assertion says. Then double fertilization involves the two fusions. So according to that if you consider both, like what the assertion and reasons are correct, but reason is not the what correct explanation of what assertion, because they have just mentioned as what double fertilization is a unique characteristics of what angiosperm. But what they are saying here with respect to the reason, double fertilization means what? Right, then because of that only it is not actually the correct explanation of what the particularly assertion. So here answer is what? 1. Right. Then next question, that is what is the another name of what? Family Compositae. So family Compositae, another name is nothing but what? Astraceae. Right. So families Compositae's name is what? Astraceae. Mainly if you consider Astraceae is another name of what? The particularly family Compositae. Right. So Astraceae, that what you should remember. Right. Then considering the following statement regarding what? Starch and sucrose synthesis during daytime, and select the particularly correct one with respect to that. Right. So correct one, that what we have to find out. The triose phosphate is confined to chloroplast and is utilized for the synthesis of starch only. Right. Then triose phosphate is translocated to cytosol to form chloroplast. Right. Then from the particularly cytosol from chloroplast. Right. Then a triose phosphate is utilized for the synthesis of both starch and the particularly sucrose. Fourth one is triose phosphate is translocated from the what? Cytosol to the what? Chloroplast. So according to this, if you consider the actually 3 and the particularly what 2 is what? Correct. Right. So that is what? The triose phosphate is translocated to cytosol from chloroplast. Right. That is what we are going to find out. Then the triose phosphate is utilized for the synthesis of both what? Starch as well as what? Sucrose. So here the particularly 2 and 3 are what? Correct. Right. So triose phosphate is translocated from cytosol to chloroplast, they are saying. So this will not take place. Right. Then triose phosphate is confined to chloroplast and is utilized for the synthesis of starch only. No, it can what? The triose phosphate even can be utilized for the what? Regeneration. And even like what? First formation will not be the starch, but you consider like what? First sucrose, and sucrose to the what? The starch formation can be what? Seen. So majorly like what? A triose can be utilized for the synthesis of both what? Starch as well as what? Sucrose. So here option 2 is what? Correct. Right. Then match the what? The particularly description given in column 1 with the steps given in the column 2 and identify the what? Correct answer based on that. Right. So here we have to find out the particularly correct match majorly. Right. So that is here what they are saying is with respect to this, that is mainly the initiation of the particularly initiation of, then proteins are spindle fibers attached to the and movement of the particularly, that what we have to find out. So according to this, if you consider initiation of what? The particularly prophase synthesized in a preparation for the mitosis while cell growth continues. Right. So that what we are going to find out here. Right. Then again the proteins are what? The particularly interface to what? Kinetochore chromosome. So that is what actually the correct match here. Then spindle fiber attaches what? With respect to the metaphase chromatid towards what? Opposite poles. Then moment of the particularly anaphase assembly of what? Mitotic spindle. Mainly moment of what? Chromosome can be what? Seen. So according to that, if you consider option 1 is what? Correct. Right. Then hormone responsible for blotting. Right. So hormone responsible for blotting is majorly the gibberellic acid, and that regulates the growth and influences the particularly here the various developmental process, including what? Stem elongation, and even the particularly what I am finding out, germination, dormancy, flowering, and even what the particularly sex expression and enzyme inductions. Right. Or mainly like what we call it as induction, and the particularly leaf and fruit. Right. Even gibberellic acid is also responsible for the particularly blotting, that is what? Internode elongation just prior to the what? Flowering. Right. So even gibberellic acid is the correct answer for what? This particularly blotting. So prior to the what? Inflorescence, or prior to the what? The particularly flowering itself, what we are going to find out. Then lipids present in the what? Outer and inner side of what? Bilayer membrane are commonly different. Right. Then reasons is saying what? Peripheral proteins are attached to the what? External surface as well as what? The inner surface of what? membrane. So based on that, if you consider here, assertion is correct, but the reason is not correct here, right? So mainly what I am finding out, the lipids are present at the what, outer and inner side, right? Inner side of the particularly bilayer are commonly different, like lecithin is one of the particularly what, outer form of what, the particularly lipids what we are going to find out. Then the particular peripheral proteins are attached to the what, external surface of what, biomembrane, and they are absent onto the what, inner side. So they are actually absent on with respect to the what, inner side. So because of that only, like what, assertion is correct here, that is what, lipids are present in outer and inner side of the bilayer membrane and are commonly different, right? So majorly like what here, the assertion is correct, reason is not correct, right? That is what the answer is here, that is what option 2, right? Then the particularly next question here, which of the following is not a component of an ecosystem, right? Component of what ecosystem, we have to find out the energy flow, decomposition, the productivity and stratification. Now what actually here, the particularly fourth option is what, correct, right? So majorly you can find out what the four important functional aspects of ecosystems are, what, productivity, decomposition and energy flow, right? So productivity, decomposition and what, energy flow, these are the four important component of what, the particularly ecosystem, right? The stratification is not the particularly a component of what, ecosystem, right? So majorly if you consider here, stratification is what, vertical zonation in the what, ecosystem, and which actually indicates the presence of what, the favorable environmental condition, which actually indicates the favorable environmental condition, that itself what we call it as stratification. So here the fourth option is not related with respect to the ecosystem, right? Then which of the following pair come under the what group, chrysophytes, right? So following pair come under the particularly chrysophytes. They have given what, diatoms and euglena. So this pair is not right, because the diatoms are what, chrysophytes. Euglena is related with respect to the what, the particularly protozoa, right? Then the euglena you consider protozoa, like what I have told you, right? Then the particularly protozoa, sorry, not protozoa, we can call it as what, protista, right? They are related to what, protista. Then euglena and what, the particularly majorly, sorry, they are belonging to something called euglena or what, euglenites, right? Euglena, even what, euglenites. Then a trypanosoma that is related with respect to the what, dinoflagellate you consider. Then diatoms and desmids, right? So yes, these two of them are belonging to something called as what, the particularly here what, the chrysophytes, right? That is what the option 3 is correct, right? Diatoms and the desmids, right? Then according to that only, here the particularly again the match the following what they have given. They have given somewhat what, tapetum, exine, the pollen kit and vegetative cell, right? Which is mainly related with respect to the what here, pollen grain only, right? So if you consider the tapetum majorly what, act as a what, the particularly nutritive layer. Yes, it act as a what, the nutritive layer. Then exine. Exine is nothing but what, it's a thick rigid, right? Exine is nothing but what, it's a thick rigid protective layer. Majorly it is made up of what, the sporopollenin, right? But the it is not a continuous layer. At a particular one aperture, it will actually form a germ layer, germ pore, right? With respect to the germ pore, there will not be any presence of what, sporopollenin. But the exine is here what, thick rigid protective layer. Then the pollen kit is related with respect to the what, the particularly oily and sticky layers. Tissue help in what, the particularly pollination, right? So which is actually help with respect to the what here, the pollination. Then vegetative cells involve in the formation of what, microspores, right? So vegetative cell majorly help up with respect to the what, microspores. So here the option 1 is correct, right? So option 1 is what, correct here, right? Then which of the following statement is what, incorrect, right? Then the pyrenoids contains the particularly protein beside starch, right? So here what we have to find out majorly. Then sexual reproduction may be isogamous, oogamous and anisogamous with in particularly green and brown algae. Yes, this is correct, right? The pyrenoids contains what, protein beside starch, that is even correct, right? Then majorly some of the what, members of the algae also occur in association with fungi, that is what, lichen, and the particularly animals, example on what particularly sloth bear. So this is what even correct. Then the leaves in pteridophytes are small, the macrophile, and large as what, the microphile. So this statement is what, incorrect, right? Because with respect to the particularly leaves in pteridophytes are small microphile as what, salangella, or large with respect to the what, macrophiles in particularly ferns. It is not related with what, only one, right? But it is related with respect to the ferns you consider and what, salangella, what we are going to see. So this statement is incorrect here, right? So option 4 is correct according to this. Then statement 1, the outer covering of the endodermis separates the particularly embryo by lipid bilayer called what, aleurone layer, right? So the outer covering of the endosperm separates the particularly embryo by lipid bilayer called as what, alveolone layer, right? So alveolone layer, then the particularly the plumule and the radicle are enclosed in the sheath, which are actually called as what, coloptile, and the particularly coleorhiza respectively. Yes, plumule related, what I am finding out here, the particularly the plumule will get extended, or which will get cover up with respect to the coloptile, and radicle will get cover up with respect to the what, coleorhiza. So here the particularly statement 1, this particular statement 2 is correct, right? But if you consider with respect to the what, majorly statement 2, the outer covering of endosperm separates the particularly embryo by proteinous layer called as what, alveolore layer, right? They told it as what, the lipid bilayer, but it's not a lipid bilayer, but it is a protein layer, right? It is what, the particularly protein layer. So according to that, this statement is wrong. So here the statement 1 is incorrect and the statement 2 is correct, right? Then next question, where do the Casparian strips occur, right? Majorly Casparian strips can be seen up with respect to the what, the endodermis or innermost layer of a cortex, right? Casparian strips, and that too what, with respect to the root, and it is called as what, starch sheath with respect to the what, dicot. So according to this, if you consider here the option 2, that is what, it can be found out with respect to the what, endodermis here, right? So based on that, like what here 112th answer is, that is nothing but what, the particularly 2, right? Then the next question is, match the column 1 with respect to the what, column 2, and select the correct answer using the what, codes. So we have to find out the actual correct answers related to this particularly, right? So here if you consider Turner syndrome, if you consider it's a trisomy or XX plus X naught, or the Morgan or a testis determining factor. So according to this particularly, Turner syndrome is related to what, X naught. So here the particular option 2 is correct. Then linkage you consider, linkage, who given the linkage, particularly based on the what, T.H. Morgan experiment by using something called as what, Drosophila melanogaster, and he itself has given something called as what, linkage as well as what, the particularly and recombination. So by means of using something called as what, a Drosophila melanogaster. So that is what the Morgan. Then Down's syndrome, right? Y chromosome. Y chromosome is the particularly what, a testis determining factor. Y chromosome is a particularly what, a testis determining factor. Then Down syndrome, if you consider, it is related with respect to the what, a trisomy condition. At the particularly 21st chromosome only, there will be a attachment of what, one more autosomal chromosome, right? And that the condition we call it as what, majorly trisomy. So total number of chromosome will be here 47. So according to this, if you consider, the option 4 is correct, right? Option 4 is correct, right? Then during the what, complete metabolism of glucose, the number of ATP formed is, right? During the complete metabolism, what you are going to find out, total ATP formed will be the 36, because here what they are including, complete metabolism. Now with respect to the what, the glucose, if you consider, right? So glucose will get a breakdown into the what, pyruvate, right? Then by means of what, the particularly citrate synthase or pyruvate dehydrogenase, it will get converted into what, the particularly acetyl CoA, right? We call it as substrate level phosphorylation, right? So substrate level phosphorylation, from there you consider it will enter into the what Krebs cycle, where it will again undergo what the cyclic changes. Then from there it will get enter into the what electron transport system. So overallly we have to tell the answer which is related with respect to the respiratory balance sheet, and that based on the respiratory balance sheet the number of what ATP formed here is what 36, right? So that is what the answer for 3 is correct, but it is not actually, it's a rough number, or what the particularly rough number what they have given, it can get vary with respect to the what metabolism, right? Then which of the following statement regarding the biodiversity hotspot are incorrect, right? Regarding the biodiversity hotspot, that is what the incorrect statement what we have to find out, incorrect statement, right? Then high endism, that we are going to find out with respect to the biodiversity hotspot, right? That is what endangered species can be what seen there. High level of what species richness, right? That even can be what is seen, right? So that is what the correct with respect to the biodiversity hotspot. Then the total number is 34 in the what particularly total what the particular 34. So biodiversity hotspots are with respect to the world, they are what 34. 5 of these occurs in particularly what India, right? So this is what actually wrong, right? Then the particularly high alien species, right? So high alien species invasion, that is what even wrong. So majorly instead of what 5, I feel like what 3 to 4 of this particularly occurs with respect to the India. So here option 2 is the correct one, right? Then the term glycocalaxy is used. Glycocalaxy is used, a layer surrounding the cell wall of what bacteria, a layer present between the cell wall and the membrane of the particularly bacteria, cell wall of bacteria, bacterial cell engineered to possess what glycoside protein. So according to that, if you consider, this is nothing but what a layer surrounding the particularly cell wall of the particularly bacteria, because even glycocalaxy can be resembles with respect to the glycogen, right? So when it enters to the what human being, to avoid the particularly immunological response, it will mimic by means of formation of this particularly glycocalaxy, so that it can get enter inside the body of a human and avoid the particularly what immunity. So here according to that, the particularly option 1 is correct, right? Then which of the following is not an influence of what the particularly auxin? So it's not an influence of what auxin. So majorly that is nothing but what apical dominance, that can be seen with respect to the auxin. Auxin even initiate what the parthenocarpy and even the phototropism, because auxins were discovered with respect to the what coloptile of this particularly by means of what the Darwin's son, right? So and that what he observed, the phototropism experiment itself with respect to the what coloptile of what grass. So with respect to this, the fruit ripening we are not going to find out with respect to the auxin. The fruit ripening is actually initiated by means of a gaseous hormone, that is what ethylene, right? So here option 4 is correct, right, which is not influenced by the auxin. Okra is a member of a family, right? So okra is a member of a family, actually what Malvaceae here. Okra is a member of a family of what Malvaceae, right? So that can be seen. Then which of the following is not a function of what cytokinin? So cytokinin, direct type of what questions these are. So which is not a function of what the particularly cytokinin here, that what actually promotes the particularly here apical dominance, right? So this is not a actually the function of what cytokinin. So it promotes what chloroplast development, it promotes the movement of nutrient and delay with respect to the what leaf senescence, that can be seen, but it's not a function. That is what the promotes what the apical dominance. Mainly auxins you consider there, it can play very important role. So C4 pathway of what CO2 fixation is found in some tropical plant. Then in this pathway CO2 is fixed by 3 carbon compound. So according to this, if you consider here, the actually the option 1 is correct, because both assertion and reasons are correct, but the reason is not the particularly correct explanation, right? So CO2 is fixed by the C3 compound. What they are asking, they are not telling the particularly which is the primary product of what CO2 fixation. CO2 is fixed by C3 compound. So C3 compound is what here? The particularly phosphoenol, right? Phosphoenol pyruvate, which is a C3 compound, right? Which takes up the particularly atmospheric CO2 in presence of what? Enzyme peptase, and then it will form the particularly product, that is what? C4 acid, right? That is what? Oxaloacetic acid. So according to this statement is correct, right? And is a correct explanation. R is correct, but the R is not actually the correct explanation with respect to the what? Assertion. So option 1 is what? Correct. Then how many meiotic divisions are required to produce 100 pollens, right? So how many meiotic divisions are required here? So one cell produces what here? One cell the mainly like what? Pollen mother cell will produces what? The 4 tetrad, right? How many? The particularly 4 tetrad by means of what? Meiosis. And the formation of what? 100 they are asking. So formation of what? 100 they are asking, right? Pollen grains. Then the particularly based on that, what I can do is the 100 divided by what? 4, and what it will give me? It will give me 25, right? So how many meiotic divisions are required to produce 100 pollen? So that is nothing but what? 25. So here option 1 is what? Correct, right? Why I have taken it as what? 25? Because with respect to the what? One pollen mother cell, 4 tetrads are going to be what? Formed, right? So what they are asking, how many meiotic divisions are required? In single meiotic division 4 cells are formed, right? So because of that only what I have taken, total pollen grain they have told what? 100 divided by 4, because what? The particularly 4 cells what it result into. So how many meiotic division is required to attend here what? The particularly 100 pollen, that is what? The 25 answer is, right? Then dash in birds is an interesting example of what? Parasitism, in which the particularly parasitic bird lays its eggs in the particularly nest of its host, and the host incubates them, right? So mainly this can be called as what? A brood parasite. The cuckoo will lay the egg inside the crow's nest, right? So that can be called as what? The brood parasitism, right? So direct form of what question we can answer it what? Correctly, right? Then match the column 1 with the column 2 and they select the particularly what? Option, right? So Phycomycetes, Ascomycetes, Basidiomycetes and Detromycetes. So fungi they have given. With respect to that we have to find out which is actually the correct match here, right? So with respect to the what? Phycomycetes, if you consider, I can call this Phycomycetes as, right? So as they are nothing but they are the what? Algal fungi, right? They are known to be what? The algal fungi. Then Ascomycetes, we call them as, Ascomycetes are nothing but they are the particularly sac fungi. Then Basidiomycetes, Basidiomycetes can be known as what? The bracket fungi, and Detromycetes are known to be the fungi imperfecti, right? So that can be what? Seen. So here based on that option 1 is what? Correct, right? Then which of the following statement is or are in is not correct, right? Not correct statement, what we have to find out according with respect to the what? Comparing an option. So based on that, if you consider here, the majorly reproduction is the production of what? Progeny possessing features dissimilar to their parents, right? Then the fungi, the filamentous algae, the protonema of mosses all multiply by budding, right? Then many of organisms like mules, sterile worker bees do not reproduce, right? That is what? Correct actually. Then reproduction is not an all inclusive defining characteristics of what? Living organism. This is what? Even correct. So according to this, if you consider, when I compare here both 1 and 2, and majorly like what? Yeast and the hydra reproduces by budding, yes. So here 1 and 2 you consider, these statements are what? The particularly incorrect, right? Incorrect regarding to that. So option 2 is what? Correct, right? So majorly fungi, the particularly fungi and the filamentous algae. Fungi does carry out what the mode of reproduction asexually and sexually, right? The filamentous algae, the protonema and the mosses and all multiply by means of budding. No, they won't multiply by means of what? Budding, right? So that is what incorrect. Then the reproduction is the production of progeny possessing a features dissimilar to their parents. No, that is not the particular correct. So here both the particularly 1 and 2 are incorrect. Then assertion, net primary productivity is a gross primary productivity minus respiration loss. Net, that is what NPP is equal to what? GPP minus R, what they are saying. Then this is what actually correct, right? Then secondary productivity is produced by the particularly heterotrophs. So secondary productivity is produced by the heterotrophs. Here both the assertion and reasons are correct, but the reason is not actually the correct explanation because it is not related with what each other, right? Mainly like what productivity basis we can consider, but when it comes to the what heterotrophs, then these are what going to produce a secondary productivity because they are dependent on to the what autotrophs, right? But here the reason and assertion are correct, but the reason is not actually the correct explanation of what assertion. Then what sequence the particularly on the template stands of DNA corresponding to the what first amino acid inserted into a particularly protein, right? What sequence of the template stand of a DNA corresponding to this, right? So corresponding to that, what I am finding out here, that is nothing but what the particularly the first mRNA codon to specific an amino acid is always what AUG, right? A DNA strand with respect to that sequence, what I have to find out. What they are asking is the first initiator codon of what protein formation will be the AUG, right? Because it will act as what initiator codon. It will act as what here? Initiator codon. And again one more nature is what? It will produce something called as what? Methionine, right? Majorly, if you consider, most of the protein synthesis will start by means of initiator codon, that is what AUG. But you consider if this is absent, right, AUG absent, then GUG will act as what? Initiator codon. But according to this, if you consider, what they are asking here, what is the sequence on the template stand of the DNA? So template stand opposite to this, what I should find out? Corresponding to the what? First amino acid inserted. So this AUG should be there with respect to the what? mRNA. Consider 5' to 3'. Consider AUG is what? The particularly the first the first initiator codon that should be present with respect to the mRNA. Then they are asking the template strands of a DNA because this mRNA is got originated by means of what? A transcription process. What originated by means of what? The transcription process. Now the template, based on that, consider if it is double stranded DNA, right? So with respect to that, if I consider it as a template, right, and if I need this AUG as what? With respect to the our mRNA, then A opposite what I should find out? T, and U opposite I should find out A, and G opposite I should find out what? C. So based on that, the particularly option 1 is correct because mRNA is a product of what? The transcription of what? The particular DNA. So transcription, what we call it as the biosynthesis of what? mRNA, that itself from the particular DNA is nothing but called as what? Transcription. That particularly stands of DNA sequence they are asking, right? Then that is what the particularly TAC you are going to find out a correct answer. So don't get confused while solving such kind of what questions. At which stage the homologous chromosomes separate due to the what? Repulsion, but are yet held by the particularly chiasmata, right? So that can be held with respect to the what? The particularly diplotin, right? So mainly which stage the homologous chromosomes separate due to the what? Repulsion, but are yet to be held by means of what? The chiasmata, that is what? Diplotin. So terminalization begin with respect to the dikinesis, but the particularly chromosome will start what? Repelling, and repelling, based on the repulsion it will form something called as what? X-shaped structure. So there you will find out with respect to the diplotin stage, right? Next, Next, that is what, again match the column 1 with respect to the column 2, right? So here, according to that, if you consider stele, endodermis, Casparian strips and bark, related with what? Anatomy only, what they have asked. Then stele, if you consider, it is nothing but what? All the tissues inner to the what? Endodermis. Stele, endodermis, inner, what we are going to find out? एंडोडर्मिस के अंदर हमें क्या मिलेगा? मेनली मिलेगा पेरिसाइकल, राइट, and even what the particularly pith, and pith with respect to the what? Vascular bundles. So these itself are nothing but what? Mainly we call it them as stele, right? Then endodermis, endodermis is nothing but what? It's a majorly innermost layer of what? Cortex, right? So later cortex के बाद आएगा क्या कि endodermis, right? Then Casparian strips, if you consider, Casparian strips are related with what? Subrine, right? Subrine is a component, and that is what that actually form what? Particularly Casparian strips. Because of the subrine, it becomes what? Impermeable to the what? Water, right? Then the bark, bark is nothing but what? All the tissue exterior to the what? Vascular cambium. So according to that, if you consider, option 1 is what? Correct, correct. Then what is the function of molecular oxygen in the cellular respiration? Now, what is the function of molecular oxygen in the cellular respiration? It causes the breakdown of what? Citric acid? No, right? It combines with the glucose to produce what? Carbon dioxide? No. It combines with the carbon from the particular organic molecule to produce what? Carbon dioxide. And it combines with what? Hydrogen from organic molecule to produce what? Water. Yes, this is what actual correct with respect to the what? Molecular oxygen in cellular type of what? Respiration, right? Then statement 1, that is what? The UAA, UAG and UGA are known as what? Stop codons, and even they are called as what? Terminator codons, right? Then statement 2, stop codon terminates the message of the what? Gene controlled protein synthesis. Stop codon terminates the message of the gene controlled what? Protein synthesis, right? So here, according to that, if you consider here, the particularly both statement 1 and statement 2 are correct, right? So because the termination process or the particularly protein synthesis or even the transcription is to be stopped by means of what? Having the terminator codons, right? Then based on that only, like what? Here both the statement 1 and statement 2 are correct. These are even called as what? The nonsense codons, because they are not going to code for what? Any type of what? Amino acids, right? So they even, not only the stop codons, they even can be considered as terminator codons, right? Then the gene the gene disorder phenylketonuria is an example of, right? The gene disorder phenylketonuria is an example of what? Actually the pleiotropy. It is an example of what? The pleiotropy. Because what pleiotropy says, one gene can have many expressions, right? One gene can have what? Many expression. That itself what we call it as the particularly pleiotropism. Here consider how it is. Phenylalanine is a one kind of what? Amino acid, that to be what? Broken down into what? L-tyrosine, right? It should be what? Broken down into what? L-tyrosine. Then L-tyrosine to what? It should get converted into the particularly melanin as a particularly pigment, right? So likewise the actually pathway is. But to convert phenylalanine to tyrosine, right? What is actually necessary here? The particularly phenylalanine, the enzyme called as what? Phenyl hydroxylase, right? With respect to the particularly patient, mainly phenylketonuria, this gene which actually code for phenyl hydroxylase, that itself is absent here, right? Then there will not be any conversion of what? L-tyrosine to melanin, right? But we'll understand, like consider as how actually this gene expression stands on. Normal human being, what I am finding out, phenylalanine will get converted into L-tyrosine in presence of phenyl hydroxylase, right? So it will in presence of what? Phenyl hydroxylase, right? So like that conversion will take place in the form of what? Tyrosine. Then tyrosine to what? Melanin it should get convert. Then with respect to the what? Tyrosine, there will be what? Tyrosinase enzyme again, right? So that what we are going to find out, right? But in between of this, there should be a one product called as what? L-tyrosine to what? There will be a conversion of what? L-dopa 2 even, right? So L-tyrosine to L-dopa, L-dopa to what? Again melanin can be what? Formed in presence of enzyme tyrosinase, right? Even what we know, the product of the substrate of one particularly enzyme which forms actually product, and the product of one enzyme is a substrate for the what? Next, right? So like that particularly cascade type of what reaction can get formed with respect to the what? Our body. Now what this L-dopa will do? L-dopa will help dopamine, right? Help dopamine to cross something called as the blood-brain barrier, right? So with respect to that, we'll have what? Different types of emotions. Dopamine majorly called as what? Happy hormone here, right? Consider, then again L-dopa will get converted into what? Melanin. So will not get what? Actually the particularly demelanized, right? So then based on that, consider if this hormone itself is absent, then phenylalanine will not get converted into L-tyrosine, then there will not be any formation of L-dopa. So only this phenylketonuria patient has, they are mentally retarded, right? So two only will understand, mentally retarded. Then melanin is not there, then definitely they will suffer from what? Albinism. So consider, one gene can have many expressions, right? That itself what we call it as the pleiotropy, right? So here the phenylketonuria is an example of what? The pleiotropy here, right? Then which of the following criteria must a molecule fulfill to act as a genetic material, right? So we should find out which is actually the better genetic material based on this, right? It should not be able to generate its replica, right? Then it should chemically and structurally be stable. It should not allow slow mutations. It should be able to express itself in the form of what? The Mendelian character. So according to this, if you consider a better genetic material, or to be a genetic material, it should not be able to what? Generate its replica. No, it should replicate, right? It should what? Actually replicate, right? So that property we are going to see it with respect to the DNA, right? And it should be chemically and structurally be stable, right? It should be what? Chemically and structurally it should be what? Stable here, right? Then you consider it should not allow the what? Slow mutation. It should allow actually the slow mutation. If it get mutate fast, then definitely what we can find out, that it is what? The wrong, right? Then it should be able to what? Express itself in the form of what? Mendelian character, right? So majorly if you consider the criteria, must a molecule to act as a particularly what here? The act as a particularly genetic material. It should not allow what? Slow mutation, right? Then you consider what? It should be able to what? Express itself in the form of what? Mendelian character, right? So majorly you can find out here, the criteria must be a particular molecule to fulfill act as what? It should be chemically stable and allow the particularly what? Slow mutation. So it should be what here? The chemically stable, and it should allow what? The particularly slow mutation. So these are the what? The particular two characters. According to this, the particular 2 and 3 are what? Correct. So option 2 is what? Correct here, right? So majorly, sorry, option 4 is what? Correct, because it should be able to express itself in the form of what? The particularly Mendelian form, right? So that is what the particularly answer 4 is correct, because we have to compare, and compare based on that only, like what? You should understand, right? A better genetic material and which one is actually the criteria for selecting it, right? Then in meiosis the division is, right? First reductional and the second one is equational. Then it's equational and the second one is reductional. Then both the particular reduction and both the equational. So in meiosis 1 is considered to be the particularly reductional division. The meiosis 1 itself is considered as what? Reductional division, and 2 is considered to be equational division. So according to this, the particularly option 1 is correct, right? Then match the particularly column 1 with the column 2 and choose the what? Correct options. So artificial system of classification, natural system of classification, phylogenetic system of classification, and then numerical taxonomy, and options are given here, right? So according to that, if you consider here, majorly you can consider what? The artificial system of classification is related with based on few morphological characters, right? Then the natural system of what? Classification, which is based on majorly based on the affinities among the particular organism and considered external as well as what? Internal features. Then phylogenetic system of classification, which is based on majorly here the evolutionary relationship between the what? Various organisms. The numerical taxonomy is related with what? Carried out using the computer. So here the actually option 2 is what? Correct, right? Then the practical purpose of classifying of an living organism is to, right, is to practical purpose is what? The particularly explain the origin of what? Living organism, yes, right? Then the particularly trace the what? Evolution of what? Living organism, name the what? Living organism, then facilitate grouping of anything based on the some easily observable characters. So practical purpose of what? Classifying the living organism is to facilitate the grouping of the anything based on some easily observable characters, right? So that is what the particularly option 4 is correct. So that's for today. That is what the mock test 7 we have completed, mainly the botany part of it is. Thank you. Please do subscribe our channel, share and like, right?